believe in the doers of the world, and they're here. We work together as a planet, as governments, and as civil society, companies, individuals, youth, everyone, to make the Sustainable Development Goals. And one of the fastest ways to solve them is look around and see who already is solving the goals.
There are 10 individuals selected this year. These people are already acting with the kind of ambition that we need for this next decade that's coming up.
We received over 1,400 applications within 3 weeks from 141 countries.
There's a lot of people talking about the problem for a long time. It is time we talked about solutions.
1.3 billion tons of food waste are generated each year globally. Now, if I give you a composter and I say you can put in everything, all types of food waste, and what more, we can do it in just 24 hours compared to the conventional composting that does it in 60 days.
I know from personal experience the power of music as an educational tool. We create music in local languages and genres that the communities we're working with can most relate to. It's important for us to use creative and innovative approaches to tackling the environmental issues that we currently have.
We look at climate smart farms as not only the most productive climate resilient farming system out there, but we feel that it's also a battery for the community that stores energy. It produces a lot of food. It also has the ability to harvest and store water. It uses 98% less water than conventional agriculture and actually increases yields 10 to 18 times compared to conventional technology in the fields. And the most important part about the Climate Smart Farm is that it's resilient to the effects of climate change.
Ginadar is an innovation, a solution that we created to reach the unreachable women and girls who are refugees and in displacement that are residing on the Lebanese territory, fleeing war, living and suffering from the worst form of exploitation.
Evox is a solution for Android tablets that enables people with disabilities to communicate and to learn. Every person with disability can have their own voice.
There's a huge gender gap between men and women in the technology ecosystem in Nigeria and across Africa. So the Women Texas program was actually born out of the need to bridge the digital divide between men and women in the technology ecosystem.
Empowering women drive the economy of the African continent, and that's the reality that we need to face.
Our mission is to inspire and creating very big scientific education for children and young people, and inspiring them and mentoring them to create the next generation of scientists in Colombia and Latin America.
We are developing a bionic hand that is 3D printed using an ecological raw material because we believe disabilities are not obstacles but opportunities.
We actually grow bikes. We use the abundant bamboo found around in Ghana to manufacture these beautiful eco-ride bamboo bikes. It's easy to produce. We've trained quite a number of youths in Ghana. We're looking at how we can scale it up to train more youth so that we can sell more bikes to generate revenue as economic empowerment.
SureChill is an award-winning and revolutionary cooling technology that has saved millions of doses of vaccine from wastage and is opening up opportunities to improve lives and enable renewable energy to be used more widely. Put simply, it's refrigeration reinvented.
More and more we're seeing around the world companies are not just producing products and selling them, but they are actually active in making a social difference.
So if we can stitch together this community of solution makers and put more fuel and support behind the ones whose work is achieving results, we really can achieve the SDGs.
There's no shortage of brilliance, of entrepreneurship, of ideas, of passion, of love. I see and I look at the work that is being done, and I see how excited many of these people are when we are talking about this work, because it really is, I think, founded in a place of this vision of the world that we can create, what we know is possible, that we can build together.
Please welcome the CEO of Shift 7 and the third U.S. Chief Technology Officer, Megan Smith.
Hello, hello. Hi. So what I want to talk about is really a fifth C, which is adding into what Young was saying, the community that goes across all of that, and this idea of collective genius. And so what you just saw was something that we've been doing for 5 years. We started when I was in the White House, when the SDGs were announced, and we put up a web form, and we asked, who is already solving these goals? And we got, at the first year, we got 800, but this year we got 1,400 submissions in 3 weeks from 141 countries of just genius things. And some of the people had volunteered to be on the selection committee, and so we created a gender-balanced, geo-balanced, topic-balanced group of people who then selected the same, youth, 30 and under, and the rest. And this is this year. So this is the 5th year. The first year, 1 hour after the ratification of the SDGs, this group took the stage at the UN in the first year, and this is the class of 2019. And they do a 4-minute pitch, and then we accelerate them. And you saw some of the innovations. I want you to notice that they were coming from everywhere. Who knew that already people working on gender-based violence and having great success in Lebanon with a bus that was driving around? Who knew that you could grow bikes using carbon sequestering bamboo, and you would be able to have women manufacturing bicycles in Ghana, and thousands were already produced. You know, who knew that there were people working on prosthetics, all of these different things that you just saw. One of my favorites, Brian here, is in Colombia. There's such a small amount of STEM graduates in Colombia, and of those who go to STEM, only 1/3 of the graduate students who leave the country come back. The country is starving for their STEM people. So what could he do? He came up with science clubs. And many people have science clubs, but who's scaling? And he scaled. He scaled them. He has 161 science clubs. And when we video conferenced into him in rural Colombia, we noticed in the back all these cool tubes and things. And he had been down with the local children, scooping up water from the lake that was dying. And they were together working on solving a community problem. Imagine working on your hometown for your homework. That can happen. We can use the internet to actually interconnect ourselves so that the collective genius of who's already fixing. And so our theory at Shift 7, and I really learned this while I was in the White House, is this idea of community organizing innovation and radically increasing the surface area, so doing the solution making through inclusion. The thing that I wanted to kind of highlight, and we just heard this with Greg, is human intelligence as we talk about data and AI that blends with that. And I wanted to pull this one story that I love. How many people have ever seen the movie Moana? You may have seen it like 100 times if you have some kids, yes. So this is a fabulous Disney movie, but it's really about a true story. And this is a Polynesian sailing canoe. And it's the story of our capability as humanity. This team from Hawaii sailed around the world with no instruments. So imagine, like, how about the front row here? We'll just be in the middle Pacific. Which way do we go? We're on that canoe. Humans know how to do that. And they sailed around the world. It's extraordinary. So this idea of human intelligence blended with the technologies and lifting more of us to be able to manifest what we would bring with passion into the world, we actually could fix nearly everything if we actually included many more people into the design side. And when they came back to Hawaii after this incredible journey around Canoe Earth, as they call it, Island Earth, the president of Hawaii asked the children for a grand challenge and asked them to, what would they do about the Alawai Canal behind Waikiki and the Alawai watershed? What solutions? Because this is very polluted. And suddenly the kids, you can imagine, one of my favorites was the middle school kids who just said, we need to have a farmer's market. And they're like, why do we have a farmer's market? Well, because then everyone would come down here and buy food and see how polluted it was, and they'd care. I mean, you couldn't, all sorts of, there were tech solutions, you named it. So just this idea of this. And also, we talked about a little bit about navigation, and I'd point out, I don't know if you see her in the corner there, Lahua, she opens Reid Hoffman's Master of Scale interview with Tory Burch and talks about being in the doldrums, and talked about the team that flew a plane around the planet, a solar plane, and they had to stay awake, right, for 22 hours. That's what you do when you're navigating. And there's a wonderful story that Lahua tells. So this idea of the humanity of us and what's possible. So when we were with the president, I worked under President Obama as the 3rd chief technology officer, did that for 3 years at the end of the administration. At the end, we did a summary conference about the frontiers, and we've talked about a lot of them today already. But we looked at these frontiers. The first one, personal frontiers, personalized medicine, personalized learning, us, right? Second frontier are smart cities, but also our wise communities. What are we doing locally? The third one was national frontiers. At that time, we looked at AI. We had sent a memo to the president about, narrow AI sort of here, generalized AI, not yet. People think decades. He wrote us a memo saying, that's not too long from now, let's get ready. So wanting us to focus in, and we started a set of town halls. and conversations around AI. We also had been working a lot on the government itself, our government and other governments, digital government. Shouldn't all of us figure out how to rotate into the government like we did? And we didn't realize that we should work in our governments. Government is only who shows up. And so if the tech sector doesn't come and take a position just like a surgeon general to make sure our field is advancing, we won't have those capabilities. And so we talked a lot about that. Also, global frontiers. Certainly the environment, climate change, green energy, huge economic opportunity to get out the mess, get out of the challenges that we are in, and think more sustainably. And then the last frontier, of course, out into space, whether it's near space or out further space. One of the favorite moments I noticed on stage was there was a woman who works at Blue Origin in Seattle, and her husband works at Boeing. She was talking about a conversation their children were having that morning. Her son said to her daughter, "No, girls work on rockets and boys work on airplanes." Because that's all he knew, right? And so bias is in our system about who does what. It's a very poignant image, right? But we have so much opportunity, and it's so exciting, and yet, why do people feel like this? Why do people feel unincluded? And if we look at our government, we have incredible people serving, and yet they're really divided. This is an amazing animation from Business Insider, and it shows how in the 1950s on, the grayscale shows them working together. Doesn't matter which parties, you can see it goes back and forth as it does in time. But eventually we get to the time of cable and on into the internet, and we're in two camps. And we're in media silos, and we don't even know what we're talking about with each other. And President Washington warned of this. Knowledge in every country is the surest basis of public happiness. Knowledge, fake news. Interestingly, when we were in government, we found that the first American penny, if you have a coin in your pocket, you'll know the US coins say liberty. But the first one, Franklin, Washington, and Jefferson designed said, liberty, the parent of science and industry. That freedom and liberty are related to science and technology. And yet, we have destruction. So we can have collective genius, collective destruction. We have algorithms that are destroying people's lives. Amazon made a tool to hire based on the data sets of how we hire itself, and it only started hiring men. So they had to shut it down. Joy Buolamwini's research, she was working on face recognition as a Media Lab graduate student, and she was trying to get the camera to see her. Her friend sat down, so she had to get a white face to be seen by the camera. The camera in your pocket is racist. Right now, you have to change the light balance for different color skin. That's not fair. And the data set from NIST right now is not working for all Americans. 99% pale male skin, well recognized. Other people, say a young woman of color, 77%. The other group, 90%. We can't have that. So we have to figure this out. We also have funny ideas about kind of trickle-down innovation. So we have projections. The trend will be that these topics are going to get AI and these places are going to get AI by 2030. But why wouldn't we just include everyone? Why is Africa missing? Like a whole continent's not listed? Partly because this is Google traffic. It shows you how there was traffic in searches, almost like the Earth from space. And look at Africa in this image, right? We need broadband everywhere for everyone because talent is everywhere. This is a little older, so it's getting a little better, but really? So 2 places in the desert. Anybody recognize one or 2? Anybody? What do you got? Burning Man. Okay, so Burning Man and, anybody know this one? This is the Za'atari refugee camp on the Jordan border. Born out of sadness, born out of joy, but they're the same size and the same budget. One is run totally different than the other, but it's on the same planet. Why are we doing that? So systems are cruel or kind depending on where you are. And the people don't individually mean to be cruel, but we're being really cruel with our systems. So how do we get to an inclusive future? For AI, for innovation, for a living planet, for democracy. And you can see that it's about community organizing. That's what we learned in government. Here's McDowell County, West Virginia, and Chattanooga. Why are they together? Well, nobody's making a WeWork makerspace in that brick building, but why not? We did Carnegie Libraries, we did the Ag Extension, let's go. Because this guy would love to go work there, but he has to get water for his family. And over here in Chattanooga, we have the highest speed internet in the Western Hemisphere because they community organized themselves. And all around the world, this is Gaza, this is Afghanistan, people are in what I call kind of the Wakanda layer of where we live. People are doing things and innovating. A president was going to Boise, Idaho, and we wondered how many tech meetups in Boise, Idaho. And there were 15. One of them has 800 people in it, and none of the neighbors in Boise know about it. So how do we welcome people into the tech world? Look at that layer. Those are Google developer groups and meetups. It's really there. And we have this amazing agenda that we can work on. So we asked and we reached out to say, who's already doing this? And it was incredible, from teams flying drones to plant 1 billion trees, people working on justice, teaching law in prison in Uganda. People are from those places solving those problems. There's a floating fab lab being done by a guy from the Amazon for his whole hometown. So instead of the cut to the tree job, cut down the trees in the Amazon, he's going to have an advanced manufacturing center off the dock. So really amazing work is happening. So we went all over the country. First, when I was CTO, we invited all the tech meetups from all the different cities and started organizing who's got boot camps and which mayors are awake. And we got St. Louis and Louisville, and people are really organizing. And then we went on a tech jobs tour when we were in Shift 7 with the Lesbians Who Tech team. And we found things like in the Mississippi Delta, there's a coding boot camp above this grocery store. Those kids who didn't go to college go here, and they end up in the Mississippi Tech sector where they're starving. Here's Memphis. In Memphis, there's 45,000 young people out of school and out of work, and yet you got FedEx, and you've got AutoZone, and you've got all these jobs, and they're starving. So who's bridging? Well, Code Crew is bridging, and they use container ship containers, and they make STEM boot camps, and they pop them into the playground off the Mississippi, and they're doing that. In Idaho, you've got boomerangers. Wherever you're from, if you went home, I'm from Buffalo, you would be a boomeranger. People bought this building in town and created the Innovation Collective, and people just meet there and do things, and they went on a road rally across Idaho, and they trained people, and 700 people in Idaho signed up to learn to code together with free computers that they could borrow from the university. So this is happening, and it's exciting, and it could be faster. One of the most exciting and also the saddest moment I had here in Silicon Valley was on the Tech Jobs tour. We were in Oakland across the river. 2,000 people showed up right there to try to get into our tech sector because they didn't know how, even though they lived here. And it was super diverse. And we were doing speed mentoring, very apprentice journey mastery. And then I came over to a party that was from my great friends at one of the venture capitalist firms, and almost everyone in the room was white and male or their wives. And I'm like, why isn't everybody working together? And we got to figure out how to do that. So at Shift 7, we're really focused on things that have to do with studio, things that have to do with placemaking and ecosystem work, any play we can do, and I encourage you to use those, and better storytelling. The last area I want to talk to you about is just about bias that we live with that is nothing any of us created, but we have to figure out how to get out of this. This is media. So when you're a child and you're watching TV, the blue is men's lines and the red is women's lines. So you learn men speak a lot and women speak a little. So when you grow up and you make media, 2,000 films, men's lines to women's lines. That's the meeting you're in, that's the street signs, that's the textbook, but it's also all the media around us. And so we've been working on trying to get somewhere with using AI and data science. This happens to be Star Wars from 1977. You see Princess Leia's lines up there, so women and by race. The new movies are getting a little more balanced, but could we actually use face recognition and natural language processing and other things on our scripts to understand the creative intent? If you did intend to make such a biased thing, fine, that's good. But if you didn't, we can help you, and it's been interesting. We've been working with Gina Davis and USC, and we're finding great progress on that. The last part of this I just wanted to share is the reality of who created things and how women and people of color get disappeared from history. How many people know this person? Ada Lovelace, a couple. Ada worked at the same time as Darwin. Ada is Lord Byron's poet math daughter. And when Darwin wrote his paper about our history, Ada wrote her paper about our future. A 55-page paper that she wasn't allowed to publish, but she attached it as some notes to a translation. She couldn't go in the Royal Society. She wasn't allowed because of discrimination. But she wrote about algorithms. She wrote the first algorithm. And she talked about what could happen, how our world could be, and she was exactly with us. I think she actually was ahead of us, because she actually said in a letter, "I wish to bequeath to the generations a calculus of the nervous system," which sounds like quantum. Now, I like her hair. It's kind of cool. But she's our founder, and we need to give her that space. And we need to know that Turing, when he worked at Bletchley Park, was working with 2/3 women. I walked in the Oval Office right after Prince William left, and I said, "Sir, what you and I are about to do with President Obama, we were going to do some coding with some children, is related to Prince William." And he said, "How's that?" I said, "Well, his wife, the Duchess of Cambridge, her grandmother and great aunt were code breakers at Bletchley Park, where they saved, right, 11 million lives and shortened the war by 2 years, what became Manchester Baby and the UK's thread of modern computing." You know, really, Grace Hopper invented coding languages, and people told her that was a dumb idea, but she said, "I think we could broaden participation," right? That the ENIAC women really did, they were the first programmers in our country. So the further back we can look to accurately see the past and see that everybody's been awesome the whole time, whether you're a Polynesian sailor or whether you're any of these inventors of our industry. The last one I would bring to you as a real highlight is Ida B. Wells. Ida, her friends were dragged from their store in the 1800s and executed. And so she was able to do the data science work on lynching. She was a genius and so famous in her day. I put her here with Nikola Tesla because Tesla was able to show off at the Chicago World's Fair, right? I love Tesla. I'm from Buffalo. He lit Buffalo using Niagara Falls. Immigrant American genius. But Ida and Frederick Douglass protested the Chicago World's Fair. Why? Because they wanted to have an African American pavilion in the fair. And in the fair and on the internet is this document. I encourage you to look at it. It's all the patent holders, all the sculptors, all the architects, genius people who would have shown off in the African American pavilion. And maybe if anyone wants to, I'd love to make it in VR. You know, Josephine Cochran invented the dishwasher, her company now in KitchenAid. But they didn't get to make that. They weren't allowed. And yet last year, we didn't let people on the CES stage either. So I would posit that there is no pipeline problem, that everyone is qualified for our industry. There is a deep culture problem that we face, and we have to get that out of our systems. And that's not something we created, but we have to inherit it and we have to fix it. You know, that Margaret really did write the code for the Apollo command modules, the lunar lander, Skylab, and coined the word software engineering. You know, that Katherine Johnson did calculate the trajectories from space, that the Macintosh team was relatively gender balanced, and really Susan Kerr did do all the graphics on your phone today. So I'll end with this image and 2-3 more, which is President Obama talking to these little girls. And he's saying to them, "What did you guys do? This was science fair." You know, when you'd walk around. And so he walks up and he said, "What'd you guys make?" They said, "A page-turning robot." So they've learned that science and technology are for service, and you could have fun with your friends, and you could wear capes. And then he says, "How'd you guys do this?" They said, "We had a brainstorming." And he said, "Really?" And then what? We made some prototypes. I mean, what if every kid on the planet was doing brainstorming and prototypes at kindergarten? And we can do that. And we can ask them to work on the SDGs with us. In fact, Grace here is in 10th grade up top teaching the police chief how to code in New Orleans in the police data initiative that we made. And these kids here are from Arizona. They're chief science officers of their schools, like class presidents. Now there's 700. So this is doable. So we're up for working with people on anything. Our company, Shift 7, means and. It also means shift to 7 billion colleagues. 7 oceans, 7 continents, 7 generations, because we need everybody on the design side, in your teams, in all teams. We need to listen to who's out there and accelerate them, no matter which continent they're on. We got a lot of challenges. They are here, you know, right there. Look at that, tell you this fabulous White House picture. The woman there is Catherine Wright. She's Wilbur and Orville's sister. She was totally part of the team, and their mom, Susan, she was a mechanical genius who taught her boys and girls design thinking. So let's get everyone at the table, and let's solve all these problems through inclusion, and I hope you'll think about this in your teams, because it's eminently solvable if we prioritize it and we make it happen. Thank you so much.